Hey there, Todd Cameron here, and today I'm going to chat to you about the first class formula. But before I do, an acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Scummo Clinic acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today and watching this on record. All right, so this is a session that is one of the most tuned to pieces of content in Project X. I'm going to give you a brief insight into exactly what that is. In the workbook, you'll see that, and the first class formula is all around culture as the foundation for growth. And clearly without that glue, without that attraction, the covalent bonds, things can more easily fall apart. And there on the RPOIL, that's revenue, profit, order, impact, legacy. This is part of the impact layer, so towards the top of the hierarchy that we use. In terms of dream teams, this is one of my favorite teams. The first time that the US sent professional basketballers to the Olympics, this is in 1992 in Barcelona, and this team was some kind of magic. Magic Johnson was indeed a part of that team, and that was after he had first retired from the NBA owing to his diagnosis of HIV, and so he was a real linchpin around it. Had Larry Bird, tons of great players, and they beat their opponents by on average 44 points. So they weren't only a team of champions, they were also a champion team, which is something you don't often see. And I'm going to suggest to you that probably had a lot to do with this person here. Michael Jordan is an amazing leader, somebody who had a true growth mindset, and Magic Johnson was also a key reason behind that. MJ is one of my favorite people ever. Now, one of the things that probably a lot of you are finding at the moment, if you look more broadly in the community at the kind of difficulties people are finding, there are a lot of dysfunctional behaviors that we are seeing in teams and even businesses that are really experienced with high levels of customer service. Airlines like Qantas and Virgin, people are having a lot of trouble with, and there are a variety of reasons behind that. There's a great quote from Andy Grove, and you can see here that he was a key person at Intel and Google. There are so many people working so hard and achieving so little. He was a master, a guru of alignment, and I'm going to walk you through some of the things that he did. Some of the challenges are that, in terms of our team and our desired outcomes, sometimes we just lack impact. We have really high aspirations about what we want to do, but what ends up happening is something pretty insipid and uninspiring. And as a result of that, what we get is reduced output, lots of effort, but not really movement in the desired direction. And we're not really ticking off on the types of things that we would like to see in terms of output. What we really want to do is turn things around and have a unified team. We want everybody rowing in the right direction. If we can have a unified team, we are much more likely to have an effective team. Effective is my preference over the word efficiency. Effective isn't necessarily about doing more with less, like efficiency is, but effectiveness is about knowing that if you do this thing, you will get this result. And we want to reliably be able to produce that. And it's only then that we'll be able to get to a high output production. This is one of my son Alex's favorite cars, the Bugatti Devo. I think there is only one of them, and they're all around about $20 million. So if you want to get your own high output, you're going to need to work really hard to get that. I'm not sure that the owner would be willing to sell it. All right, moving into the teach. One of the things that we do a bit of work on is making sure that we unveil our own values. Now, when we start a practice, our own personal values are often super clear to us, and they should be super clear to you. And other people might well understand them by observing you closely. So when you first start a practice, often the practice takes on your personal values and they become the practice values. Even if that's not explicit, often the people around you kind of understand what that is. And by regularly checking in with you, it kind of calibrates to your personal values anyway. The challenge is that as the practice starts to grow, they're going to have to be explicit values, and they must be owned by the team. You cannot have values that are pushed down from the top. You need to unpack what's important about what it is that you do in your community for the people that are part of your team. And you can determine who's part of that team. You might say that it's your employees only, but the GPs that are there are engaging your practice for services and facilities. And so they need to buy into those values as well. And so when you do the work on the values, it's deep and slow work, and you'll probably have a few test iterations that go out in the marketplace. But think about it as making some meta decisions, so some high level decisions that mean that a bunch of other decisions that you make afterwards are much, much easier to make because you already know the rules of the game. So, if your value was all around length and strength in general practice, it might be that you say, you know what, we're not going to do occupational health because that is not length and strength general practice. Or it might be that your values are around, one of my favorites that's often mislabeled is integrity. Integrity is a word that literally means following through on, or integrity means not broken. And so that means following through on your promises, and is often misunderstood for transparency. But transparency, when it's part of your clinic values, involves a really, really big commitment to being honest and truthful about everything going on in the practice. Some of these values that people commonly choose are not adhered to, and you are judged by the weakest link. So please make sure you choose values that you are already doing moderately well and know that you can do better at, and make sure you choose only 3. You can't have 20 values. This is not like Kevin Rudd in 2007, where he had like 8 number 1 priorities. You can only have 3 things that you choose from. And if you can't fit into those 3, then you need to keep going back and having a look again. You can see here 3 to 5. 5 I'm less of a fan of now. I think less is better. They need to be super, super clear. So somebody else should read them and understand what they are without you having to give a long-winded explanation. And you need to continue to refine these. This should be like MasterChef, where you do a beautiful reduction, you get all those lovely ingredients, you boil off all the stuff that doesn't matter that much, and what you're left with is something super, super tasty. And then you need to have role clarity. And for high-performing teams, you need to have clarity. You need to have psychological safety. Psychological safety is about the quality of voice and knowing that there will be no repercussions for saying that you're in trouble because you're sharing it early. And the quality of voice is super, super important to have in there. The other bit you need on the other end is accountability. And accountability comes back to a dashboard, and dashboards must have numerical targets. You might be thinking that there are a lot of things that we do that you can't measure. And whilst that's true, you need to be able to find some kind of a proxy measure to know if you're making progress. And the truth here is you cannot hit a target that you can't see. You must have clear goals and a focus on the targets that you're going to use. This is a really good bit of homework by John Dewar, Measure What Matters, and he talks around OKRs, objectives and key results. And the way that these cascade up through the organization should be that you cannot ever have a group that reports to a team leader and they achieve their OKRs, but the person above them does not, on the basis of them achieving that. So these need to really carefully filter through the organization. When you read this bit of work, and Andy Grove was a substantial, not founder, but refiner of these ideas, then what you'll see is that with most of these organizations, including Intel, Google, it took them 12 to 18 months to get this right. So you do need to be comfortable with experimenting with this, and everybody should know what people's key metrics are and what they are being judged on. So, if I get an opportunity to fit a Tigers slide in, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to do it. Usually it's Dusty. You can see that you can probably find him in the picture. Actually, this is probably an old one. Maybe there is no Dusty in there. My God, that's terrible. But it does need to be teamwork, and all of these pieces need to fit together. So all of your teams need to have OKRs that obviously plug together, that as a group we achieve the desired outcome. So you can imagine that if you're playing for an AFL team or whatever sport, you pick your sport, but if somebody is in defense versus offense, they're going to have very different personal metrics that are their goals than they would in other positions on the field of play, on the court, on the arena. They're all going to be different roles, and they're all going to have different ideal metrics around them, because the game can be won and lost, but on an individual basis, we really need to know, did those people perform their roles? And this is often why you hear coaches afterwards say they played well to the system. This playing well to the system downgrades the personal contribution. I think it makes it sound as if it doesn't matter who you put in there. That is completely not true. Of course, you need to have high quality people, A graders and B graders in those positions. And A graders and B graders do not need to be motivated to show up. They have really, really good personal accountability. So you better give them scoreboards, because they want to know if they're winning or not. That's super important. Now, this is a really, really brief overview, because each of these sessions are, a few hours worth of work, and maybe even days in total. We work with Patrick Lencioni's table group, and we've done some work with Cameron Herold. There are a lot of great people in this space that we've done work with in Project X, and at SGPO. We've also had a lot of people that can help you with these areas. What you need to do, though, is make sure that you do come out with some clear values, even if they are just kind of written in pencil and not yet locked down. You do need to make sure that you commit to a cadence of meetings. And again, we talk about this in much, much more detail over multiple pieces of content in Project X. If you're going to say, what part of a business would I look at to know how effective the business is, I would suggest you let me in on one of your leadership level 10s. In 60 to 90 minutes, I'd have a pretty good idea about how well your business is functioning. Great businesses have a metronomic cadence of meetings, the right meetings with the right people, the right focus, the right data, the right accountabilities. And you're going to need to set your objectives and determine your key results that feed up into delivering those objectives. You've got a bit of homework to do here. You can go and read all the content you like on this. I'd love you to read all Patrick Lencioni's books. That John Doerr book is really good. There are several other great books on this that you may well have found yourself. And you can choose to do all of those things, or you could choose to work with people that have done the work with this in general practice and know what works in that environment, and be part of a community that is a psychologically safe space. That's Project X. If you think that's something that you'd like to have a chat with one of our team about, just drop an X below the area where you see this content. One of our team will reach out to you and have a chat. Otherwise, go well, use these ideas well in your practice and get to implementing and improving. And you also need to be accountable. That's really important to keep in mind. Cheers.